Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, we will uncover some of the most common mistakes made during the MRI spine reporting. These errors can impact diagnosis, treatment, and patient outcome. In this video, we also help to minimize these errors. So let's begin with the first error is incorrect level identification. So what mistakes we do? Mislabeling vertebral levels, not checking for sacralization or lumbarization, leading to wrong level surgery risk. So not checking for the lumbarization, as in this image there is very small intervertebral disc between S1 and L5. So this mimics the S1 vertebra labeled as L5, and we can see as the lateral image showing the fused transverse process of L5 vertebra. So this is the sacralization of L5. So this cannot be diagnosed by only seeing the lumbar sagittal image. For this, coronal image is required or whole spine numbering. We can avoid this type of error by counting the whole spine vertebral levels as is given in this scout image. That is this one is the C1 from T1 to T12 and then L1 to L5. So after counting all these vertebral level, we can avoid the mislabeling vertebral levels, or we can compare with the CT image. These images are 3D reformatted images. First one is the normal. There is no lumbarization or sacralization, whereas the in second image, that is the B, where is the one extra lumbar vertebra, that is the transverse process is floating. So this is the lumbarization of S1, whereas in the C image there is a only L4 vertebra. So this denotes that there is sacralization of L5. So this mistake can be avoided by counting the vertebra in sagittal section of whole spine MRI or by comparing with the CT. Now the second mistake is incomplete description of disc pathology, not distinguishing between the bulge versus protrusion or extrusion, and failing to mention the disc material contacts with the neural or thecal sac, indents or compresses neural structure. As we can see in this image, that is the axial representative image showing the protrusion and extrusion causing compression of the traversing nerve roots. Let's have a quick summary of this pathology. If it is more than 25% disc circumference is bulged, then it's called the disc bulge. It is again divided into the circumferential or not circumferential. If it is some circumferential, called symmetric, and if it is not circumferential, called asymmetric. So depending on the symmetry, it can cause the compression of the neural foramen or spinal canal equally. As we can see in this image, the symmetrical disc bulge causing the similar neural foramen compression, whereas in asymmetric we can see that the left side is more compressed as compared to the right side. Now if less than 25% disc circumference is involved in disc bulge, then it is called herniation. Herniation is again divided into two types, protrusion and extrusion. And protrusion is when base is larger than the dome, denoted by this yellow line is base and red one is the dome, height of dome. If base is larger than the dome, then it is called protrusion, whereas if dome is larger than, denoted by this red line, and base is denoted by this yellow line, then it is called extrusion. While reporting the MRI spine, have to be more precise about the symmetry, asymmetric, protrusion or extrusion, and location of the disc herniation, and compression over the spinal canal and nerve root should be more specific to avoid this mistake. Now the another mistake is omitting migration or sequestration detail of the disc herniation. So this image representative image shows the sagittal section showing the migration of the herniated content cranially. At this level, this is causing the spinal canal narrowing, and in sequestration there is detachment of the herniated content within the epidural space. So this can make the spinal tumor, epidural tumor. So sometimes requires contrast to differentiate it from the epidural mass. To avoid this mistake, these details should be mentioned in report. Now next is ignoring foraminal and extraforaminal disc herniation or pathology. In this image, we can see that there is a different location of disc herniation, that is the central, subarticular, foraminal and extraforaminal. Many reports only focus on the central canal, that is the central canal stenosis or narrowing. Foraminal stenosis or exiting nerve root impingement is often underrated, so sometimes they are missed, and the far lateral disc herniation are easily missed on sagittal or axial images. So this is easily missed while only seeing the central region. As we can see in this image, there is a hypointense lesion noted in the left extraforaminal region. This is the disc protrusion noted in extraforaminal region causing the left exiting nerve root compression. As we can see that there is no neural foraminal or lateral recess or spinal canal stenosis. So sometimes these are overlooked and missed the finding. Now another one is the underestimating spinal canal or foraminal stenosis severity. So reporting stenosis as mild, moderate, severe without describing the CSF effacement, nerve root crowding, ligamentum flavum hypertrophy, associated facet arthropathy. So this should be mentioned in report to avoid this type of error. Now what we see in this sagittal section of cervical spine showing the disc herniation causing the spinal canal narrowing along with the spinal cord compression, and there is signal. These points should be mentioned in report. Whereas in the second image we can see that the disc herniation causing the severe spinal canal stenosis with cauda equina nerve root compression. What is the grading of spinal canal stenosis? So it is given by the Lee. This is called Lee grading system. Grade 0 is normal canal, as we can see in this normal canal there is no narrowing, whereas in grade 1 that is the mild, where CSF is visualized within the thecal sac and the nerve root are not clumped together. Whereas in moderate there is partial effacement of the CSF space, but there is crowding of nerve roots, and in severe there is no CSF spaces, complete clumping of the spinal nerve roots seen in spinal canal. So this is the Lee grading system of spinal canal stenosis, and this should be given while reporting the MRI spine. Now the another one is the missing modic end plate changes. What we see in this, that the modic change and its type. So sometimes we fail to specify the modic change and its type, and also fail to differentiate modic change from the enthesitis. Now these are the images of MRI sagittal section of lumbar spine showing the T2 shows high signal intensity, in T1 it is low, and another image showing the star sequence where the high signal intensity noted in the end plates. This is the modic change type 1, and this can cause the non-specific low back pain. Sometimes this is missed in report. Modic change must be differentiated from the enthesitis. Depending on the location, it is differentiated. Enthesitis is located at the site of the inflammation at the site of the ligamentous or tendinous attachment site. So, in this vertebra, we see at the anterior or posterior corner where anterior longitudinal ligament and posterior longitudinal ligament attaches. Modic change visualized at the end plate, and it is associated with the other degenerative changes and mostly seen in the older people, and this is the mostly due to the inflammation arthropathy, and this is more specific for the ankylosing spondylitis, whereas this is the degenerative change and this is due to the biomechanical inflammatory change, and both shows post contrast enhancement. Enthesitis is pathological, whereas the modic change is the degenerative change. These two pathology must be differentiated from one another. Now the overlooking facet joint pathology. What we see in degenerative changes, that is the facet joint arthropathy, synovial cyst, as we see in this image. This is the T2 axial image showing facet joint effusion. These are the facet joint effusion, and there is a small juxtaarticular cyst. This can also lead to the low back pain. This is the T2 sagittal image showing facet joint arthropathy appear as the linear T2 high signal intensity within the facet joint. So these are the degenerative changes within the facet joint. These are overlooked in the report. Now another one is inadequate description of spondylolisthesis. Common mistake done in this is not specifying grade of enterolisthesis. Another one is the associated canal or foraminal compromise should not be mentioned in report. So this is the Merding grading system. This is the healthy spine. This one is the grade 1, that is the enterolisthesis of less than 25%, whereas grade 2 is 25 to 50%. Grade 3 is 50 to 75%, and grade 4 is more than 75% enterolisthesis. So this should be defined correctly in report. and associated canal or foraminal compromise should be mentioned. As in this image, we can see that there is a neural foraminal stenosis due to the enterolisthesis of L5 over the S1, and there is a pars defect. So this should be mentioned correctly in report. Now the missing pars defect. So sometimes we miss to define the pars defect in vertebra. If it is acute, then it shows the edema. This should be most specified in report that this is the acute or chronic, because the acute is painful and there is a edema, whereas in chronic there is no edema, and it should be compared with the CT. As we can see in this, there is a bilateral pars defect in CT image, and in MRI there is a bone marrow edema, suggesting that it is a acute. In this image, we can see that there is a pars defect without edema. So this could be the chronic. So this should be specified in report. Now next mistake is the not addressing alignment or curvature. So we can see in these images that sagittal image shows the kyphosis, whereas coronal image shows the scoliosis. So we have to see all images to define the curvature, that is both sagittal and coronal images. And we should mention the curvature, which side is curvature, and level of kyphosis or scoliosis. Like in this, there is a thoracic region, the scoliosis is in thoracic region. This should be mentioned because it is very important for the surgical purpose. Now another one is the not describing the conus and cauda equina adequately. So in every report, it should be mentioned that conus level and the signal abnormality if present, and the cauda equina level. In this image, we can see that the conus medullaris ended at the L1 level, and this is the cauda equina nerve root. Whereas in the second image, we can see that the conus medullaris is ending at the L5 level. So it is below its normal level. So this is due to the third cord. In this image, we can see that the T1 high signal intensity within the cauda equina, whereas it is suppressed in Easter image. So this is due to the lipoma or fat infiltration. Now ignoring extra spinal findings, that is tunnel vision. During reporting of the spine, paraspinal soft tissue should be mentioned in a report, like kidney, retroperitoneal structure, pelvic structure, if there is any abnormality. So this should be mentioned in the report. As we can see in this image, there is a T2 high signal intensity lesion is noted in the right kidney, that is the cyst. And another one is that there is a complex lesion noted in the pelvic cavity. So this should be mentioned in the report. And now the poorly structured reports. So after seeing all these, reports should also be properly structured and should not use vague phrases without severity grading, not correlating findings with symptoms, and overlying long narrative without prioritizing clinical relevant abnormality. So these should not be included in the report. Reports should be very precise, correctly, and organized according to the severity of the lesion. Now last one is the failing to compare with prior study. So if in case of any long standing pathology, there is any prior or previous report or findings or any surgical history, say, then this should be compared to see the progression, stability or post-operative changes. And if we don't do that, then we miss the interval complications. Now the best practice checklist is be systematic, that is check all sequences T1, T2 and Easter, see all images, that is sagittal, axial and coronal images, standardize disc pathology description, count vertebral bodies carefully, look outside, see for the soft tissue lesions, correlate with clinical findings and previous imaging findings, and use contrast in suspected cases of infection and tumor.